right under my stand. Oh. Where? Right there. Oh, I see him. Here he comes. Here he comes.
You're listening to the Roost Podcast, brought to you by Buckeye Bowhunter. And now your hosts, Josh Grund and John Shiner.
I don't even remember Kentucky, dude. It feels like a lifetime ago.
Kentucky recap.
Yeah, man. It's been, again, a while since we've been on here, guys. It's, life just comes at you and you get busy and with work. And again, me and John, we both got full-time jobs, so we try to keep up with this as much as we can. The YouTube content, I guess we'll do a little housekeeping real quick. The YouTube content, I've kind of put a hold on it this spring. I think, me and John talked and we kind of decided we filmed a lot of stuff, but I want to kind of hang on to it until next spring and post it for you guys so that it's a little more timely and it's not so late. It's more relevant, I guess, at that time. So stay tuned and look out for that next year. For deer season, we're still going to be posting deer hunting videos like throughout the season, so don't worry about that. But we've been on kind of a hunting. Well, I've been on kind of like a hunting spree or rampage for the last a month, so it's been super busy and hard to get our schedules aligned. But we've done some hunting, we've been successful, we've made some mistakes, and we want to talk about all that today. John and me and Bryce, who again is not on the podcast today, made a trip down to Kentucky for opening weekend, and we thought we'd talk about that trip and some of the stuff that we, kind of some of the takeaways and lessons learned and successes and stuff like that for the next hour or so. So what do you got, John? What do you think? Did you have fun on that trip?
Oh, yeah, great trip. I know, just prefacing, what we're about to talk about, Mr. Grund here has been on fire. On fire, man. Excellent spring. I'm still waiting for mine, but excellent season. Congratulations to you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
A lot of hard work paid off, and we'll get into the nitty gritty of it. Kentucky, I know we were leading up into it, doing a lot of preparation, getting our stuff together. Had a lot of high hopes. Again,
what was the one thing we talked about, doing differently this year in the podcast before? Do you remember what that was?
Yeah, so we were going to try and implement some strategies outside of the norm. And I think you did that very well on, your first Kentucky bird. A little off the beaten path, and it turned out awesome for you. We had the three of us down there, so we had to think our way through a little bit. Bryce didn't have a vehicle, so we only had two vehicles, so we kind of had to be strategic on where we were going, how we were dropping people off. I will just say, opening weekend of Kentucky on all public ground was a circus, to say the least.
Oh, yeah.
Very
It was
fun.
packed. It was packed, for sure. I will say you mentioned us three being down there and having to be strategic about it. I'll say it is the amount of information you get compared to when, like, the times I've been down there by myself, having three people and being able to spread out. A lot of times, for you guys who are trying to plan a trip like this for next year or even like a deer season trip, when you're down on a trip like that by yourself, you can only collect so much data, so much information. And even if you're in groups of two or something like that, you're going down with a buddy, a lot of times it's more fun to hunt together. But every once in a while, it's a good idea to split up, go your separate ways, because you're going to cover more ground. You're going to hear more things, especially during turkey season. And there were several mornings when we were down there. That was kind of what we were trying to do, was like, let's divide and conquer, split up, and then, we'll reconvene in the middle of the morning. And what did everyone see? Where should we go? Maybe we should go where John was hunting, because it seemed like there was a lot of birds there or something like that, and just put together game plans like that. And that happened. I feel like we did that several mornings, and it really did help, because we were able to, like I said, come back, meet, and look at Onyx and cross-reference where we were hearing birds and where you were hearing birds. And, I could hear the birds gobbling over on the ridge you were on. And, did you hear that bird at 9:30-ish or something? No, I didn't hear it. Oh, there was definitely a bird down there. And those conversations were great. And the amount of Onyx pins that we were able to gather in those 4 days was pretty good, I think. So definitely, as fun as it is to hunt together and buddy up, and it's definitely an effective way to hunt too. It's definitely helpful. That's how those guys, like the hunting public, are so successful all the time, is they got groups of dudes running around looking for, sign and scouting and looking for turkeys and gobbling and stuff for them. So, but it was a blast. So that was one of the tactics I think we did really well at implementing. What do you think?
Yeah, no, we did both very well. We spread out, looked at new ground. I think we the plan, we had a plan, and the plan got had to pivot. Like I said, there were a lot of people out there. I felt like I constantly, everywhere I wanted to go, somebody was there, or I got in on a spot and a guy was walking down the ridge, and I'm like, well, okay, well, plan B or plan C. I know I ran into a lot of pressure, which is fine. It's public land, it's opening weekend. But spreading out was awesome. And I think we had a couple of circumstances where teaming up worked out great, or at least gave us an opportunity.
Oh yeah.
Day one, we got down there, what was it, Friday, and we kind of split apart and tried to roost birds. I went to a spot. You and Bryce kind of teamed up because, he didn't know the lay of the land very well. This is his first time down, so he kind of hung with you. I went into a spot, no truck. Great. I put my truck there, started walking up the ridge, and, we were all moving up the ridges, trying to roost a bird. And I come around the bend, and there's a guy just, standing in the trail, just hooting his head off. I got to talk to him really quick. He's a younger guy. We had a brief conversation, and what are you doing, man? He goes, what does it look like? I'm trying to roost a bird. I go, oh, okay, me too, bud. I'm like, well, good luck to you. And I just kind of cruised past him. And I went to the back of the piece of public, over, a mile back. So I kind of got out of his way, but that first night I didn't hear anything, which is not out of the norm. I think we try and put forth the utmost effort, right? This isn't like a party weekend, away from the kids, away from work. You kind of want it to be that, but we had goals in mind. So staying out late, trying to roost birds was big this weekend. Waking up very early and beating the crowds, something that we had to do. So yeah, that first night I didn't hear anything. Ran into a guy. You want to jump in on your first night trying to get in on a bird?
Yeah. I mean, so this was the same chunk where me and you doubled up last year.
Yeah.
And there's traditionally always birds all over that chunk of property. And me and Bryce ended up, like you said, we teamed up and we went down in this river bottom. We were planning on crossing the creek that me and you ended up crossing and, listening to birds up in there, kind of just hoping the same kind of group of birds was up there that we hunted last year. And we ended up hearing a bird gobbling up a different ridge, and ended up triangulating him. And, thank God Bryce was there with the river noise and everything. I think I'm going deaf. He definitely helped me pinpoint exactly where that bird was. And he was like spot on in the morning. Cause, yeah, like you said, it was busy. Last year we got there at like 2:30 in the morning at this pull off where we were going in the morning. And, guy pulled in like 8 minutes after us, so like we planned on getting there very early. Kind of the same thing happened, and me and Bryce kind of worked up. So this bird, so we ended up roosting him. He was essentially where I see all these birds roost. He's at the kind of the 3/4 of the way up a ridge off of like a short spine, or like a short like offshoot ridge or spine ridge coming off, and like right at that tip. And we were looking at the maps. There's a big gully. There's like a little drainage right there next to him. And it just seemed like a really good spot for a turkey to roost. And it really sounded like that's where he was. And down there, you know how it is, those gobbles, you can really get confused about which direction they're coming from and how far they are. But we were pretty confident. So when we went in the morning, luckily there's a nice access path that probably got us within 300 yards of this bird. And then we just had to like tiptoe through the leaves. And it was one of those mornings. We got so high up on this mountain and it was just dead calm, and the stars, and you could see like Moorhead way out in front of us. It was pretty cool. And me and Bryce, we kind of settled in. We were probably, based on Onyx, within 150, 200 yards of where this bird was roosted. And it was pretty open at this time, right? Wouldn't you say, like, the leaf litter, or the leaves weren't really popping yet. Not like they were the second time I ended up going down. But, so we were scared to move in too close, because we did bump a hen off the roost coming about halfway up our trail there. And that kind of was like, oh no, maybe that Tom was roosted, like, right in here, and he just sounded like he was roosted up there. Like, so we kind of paused for a little bit there before we ended up, no, we're gonna stick with the plan. We're gonna move in closer to where we put our pin. And sure enough, sun starts coming up. Bryce has hypothermia. He's like shivering his butt off. It
was cold. It was cold.
Oh, it was a cold morning, and like 85 yards, dude. So, woo-hoo-hoo, on it. And he keeps gobbling. We hear a couple other birds gobbling pretty far off. And we hear him, this goes on for about 20 minutes. He probably gobbled a dozen times. He flies down. We didn't hear him fly down, but he got quiet. So we assumed, and it was pretty well into daylight, so we assumed he was on the ground. And we gave it a little bit, and I gave a few calls, and all of a sudden he hammers again at like 50, 70 yards, and you can tell he's on the ground. Maybe a little further than that, because me and Bryce ended up making a move, working up towards the hill to him, because he definitely had the upper ground. He was up above us. And, I mean, you know how it is. It's kind of difficult to call a bird downhill, because they can see everything, right? You want to try to call them uphill, or at least be on the same level of them as them. And so we're scooting up this hill, trying to use the topography to make sure that this bird can't see us. And it's pretty open. We're trying to find, anything to hide in. And then this bird just hammers again. And dude, I swear it was like 50 yards, 40 yards. And I'm like, get down. And Bryce just like hides behind this big tree. It's just a big old growth forest. And I just end up like laying on my back in the leaves. And I got like a kind of a down bush right here, but it's not really hiding me. And I'm just laying there like, where's this bird? Like I should be able to see him. And then boom, he gobbles again. Boom, he gobbles again. And I got the camera rolling and everything. And he ends up just sliding out from behind this probably 4 foot wide old growth oak up on top of this ridge. And I just see his tail fan I'm like, oh my God, Bryce, he's right there. And I feel bad for Bryce, because he never even got to see the bird, because he was so worried about moving. But I'm luckily where I was laying, my gun's kind of aiming right at him like this. And this is going to be a theme throughout this podcast, guys. But he ends up coming down the hill and he's working his way down. And I swore, man, he was at like 30 yards. And he started getting nervous. He come out of strut and he definitely saw us. And he turns and he starts working his way uphill. Put the beat on him. Pow! And he just flies away. Missed him. Yes. That was heartbreaking because that, like, when a hunt works out that way on public land, opening morning in Kentucky, that was a big bird. Mm-hmm. It was like a beautiful, crisp, clear, like, you know, frosty morning. It was like everything you dream of. Like, and to blow it like that was pretty heartbreaking, you know, because public land birds, they're hard to come by, man. And I didn't know if I was going to get another opportunity like that. So that bird flies away. I jump up and like run up to the top of the ridge to see if, you know, maybe he died or something in the tree or on the other side. We'd never seen him. No blood, nothing like that. And like when I ran up there, I'm like, dude, this was way further than 30 yards. This was like 60 yards. And I just totally just blew it, man. I just did not guess the range. I thought he was way closer. And I blame that on just the hills. Like, I think judging distances in hills is so different than judging his distances in, you know, on flat ground, like where we're from. And, you know, archery hunting, we're carrying a rangefinder. I'm not doing that. You know, maybe that's I know we talked about that. Maybe that's something we should be doing. Turkey hunting, especially in terrain we're not comfortable in. But yeah, I just misjudged how far that bird was, and that 410, those BBs probably didn't even make it to him, because in the video you could see like half of my shot was probably taken out by a branch and a leaf right in front of my gun that I didn't see either too. So there was a whole bunch of things at play, and, you know, just being excited and wanting to be the hero and, you know, shoot one and blowing it like that. So that broke my heart. But that also, it was cool because I wish Bryce was here to talk about it, because Bryce, he's not the, you know, I don't want to talk about him when he's not here, but he's not the most advanced turkey hunter. He hasn't been doing it very long. And that was one of the first times I think that he's had a chance to like roost a bird, get on a bird, call a bird in off the roost, and like see how that whole process happens. So I think he really enjoyed that and had fun tagging along at least. But yeah, man, bummer. So that started the trip off on like kind of a low note. And I'll be honest, dude, that pissed me off. I was in a bad mood for like the next 12 hours, dude. I was not happy. Yeah. But yeah, what did you see that morning? Did you have any luck or?
So yeah, that morning I didn't have anything gobbling on, you know, the ridge that I was pretty much set up on. You know, I was patient, and hey, if they weren't gobbling, so be it. I hung out for hours, did some calling, and you know, ended up seeing some movement and had 3 hens walk, you know, 10 feet from me. They just kind of cruised through. You know, I got my blood pumping a little bit, you know, seeing.
Oh, that's cool. I don't remember you telling me that.
Yeah, I had.
Okay,
so
cool.
So I was calling, and then I saw some movement, and I'm like, uh-oh, those are turkeys. Here they come. And I, you know, saw a hen. I'm like, okay. Then I saw some movement behind her, and I'm like, okay, I'm in it. You know, please have the big guy just following her. Then it was another hen. Then it was another hen. And I'm sitting there, you know, freezing my butt off, just, you know, trying to hold steady and waiting for the big guy to come through. And there was no big guy. I know the rest of that morning, did a little bit of scouting. I had gone, you know, that was probably the extent of the ridge that I've ever gone. So I kind of spent the rest of the morning kind of working my way through this bottom, this drainage, you know, kind of doing double duty. You know, if I strike up a bird, awesome. But I'm also doing a little bit of deer scouting, looking for sign. But I ended up working up through this huge valley and climbing up this, huge ridge on the backside. This is late morning. It's getting towards noon. I ended up giving you a ring, and we were going to meet at the top of the ridge, kind of meet up, put our heads together. As I was getting closer to where you were at, a guy was up there, and he ended up shooting. So be it. I never ended up meeting up with the guy to see what he got or if he missed or whatever. But it was kind of uneventful for the rest of the opening day. We met up, grabbed a bite to eat, put our heads together, and then went back to roosting, the rest of that day. Put a game plan together, and kind of uneventful. We moved into the next day.
Yeah, remind me, where did we roost that night?
We ended up calling it quits on that chunk because there were so many other guys.
Yeah. Because we ran into a bunch of people coming out. There was like 8 trucks where me and Bryce were parked. So
yeah. A lot of let's just say, so last year we had the Ohio turnout. There were Ohio trucks everywhere. This year, looks like New York and Michigan came to play, man. I swear, every pull-off either had a New York plate or a Michigan plate.
Yeah.
But we ended up moving into the Boone to roost, kind of get back into historical spots, where we had some success last year, early saw birds. That kind of led into our next day. I believe day 2, you had redemption, correct?
No, it was on Monday when I killed that bird.
Monday. Okay.
Yeah. So, man, this is bad. My memory is like failing me right now. So Saturday night, where did we actually roost? Do you remember? Did we go together or did we all spread apart?
I believe we spread apart out on the Boone on different ridges.
Up that gravel road?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
Is that where we ran into that group of Jakes?
Oh, that's what we did. Okay. Yeah, we ended up driving around a little bit and we were planning on, okay, I remember now. Yeah, we ended up seeing that group of Jakes. So we ended up, we went and got barbecue, didn't we? Yeah. And then we got in the car and we kind of did some like field cruising and driving around and seeing if we could just spot some birds. And we ended up going into this place where we hunted last year and we ended up doing pretty good later on and ended up seeing 3 Jakes across the road. And that got us kind of fired up. We're like, oh, there's turkeys here. And that's what brought us back the next morning, and we all split up on separate ridges.
Yep. So yeah, that next day we went over there to where we saw those Jakes, and we got up really early, drove out there, and it's so frustrating, but it is what it is. We pull in and there's guys in all the, spots. We went all the way in the back. We're like, oh, maybe nobody's back there. Wrong. They were, I pulled up next to these guys and they're like, yep, hey, good luck to you. We're going out these 2 ridges. There's 2 of us here. Okay. And that was where
when you say it was packed, dude, though, so this access road or this National Forest road that we're driving is like 6 miles long. And there's probably, how many pull-offs you think? 40, 50 pull-offs? Something, like there's a lot. And dude, there's like a truck at every one. Like every one. And we got there at 4:00 in the morning.
Yeah.
So there's still, 2 hours of daylight left.
So
Yeah.
it was a lot. I know later on in the weekend we ended up bumping into a game warden, and just stopped and chatted with him. We asked him some questions, and he's like, "Oh, where have you guys been? This and that." We're like, "Oh, we went down that 6 mile long road." He goes, "Oh, I just left there," and we're like, "Pretty busy, huh?" And he goes, "Oh, buddy, it was very busy." He goes, "I ended up checking, I think he said like 39
Yeah,
different
licenses.
people.
Hmm.
So 39 people on a 6 mile road. Yikes! Lots of people."
Yeah.
Um, but we ended up hunting up there anyways. I ran into those guys, and they're like, "Sorry, we're taking these two ridges." All right, fair enough. So I kind of had to backtrack, uh,
Yeah,
which
and
is fine.
everyone's probably like, "Oh, well, why wouldn't you like try to get away from the pressure?" Right? Um,
We
it's
tried that last year,
and it
and
just didn't work. There was no
it,
birds.
there's a
So,
reason. There's a reason. There's a lot of people there. It's because
yes,
that's where they're at.
that's where the birds are. And as long as you can get, and it's hard to explain, but all these pull-offs are on like their own separate ridge.
Hmm.
And as long as you can get a ridge, it seems like it's kind of this like unspoken thing down there that like nobody walks in on somebody else's ridge. Like if there's a
Yeah.
car there, you keep going. Like around in Ohio, it's not like that here. If there's a guy in the parking lot, like more people are going to show up. Like nobody's going to give you that kind of space. But yeah, it's there was just a lot of people, but I think we were all the way back there already. It's getting daylight,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
last year there was a ton of people there too, and we still saw birds.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. It does not mean that you're out of the game, or it's
yeah,
going to
so
ruin your hunt. So we weren't discouraged.
no, and
Um,
you'll see how this hunt goes. Me and John talked about it. Like John was like, when we walked back to the trucks after this hunt, we'll talk about it. He's like, I'm never gonna get discouraged again when I don't get the spot I want. So
no.
it was a
It,
crazy morning.
honestly, being forced into something new isn't always the end all be all. You
That's a
know, I
great way to
I
look at it.
I had all the plans in the world to go down these two ridges, but these guys from West Virginia beat me to it. Good for them. Fine. I backed up, got to a parking spot that was available, parked, and I think me and you ended up there. There was a break in the ridges, so we got to split up. Um, so it was kind of the only one available. Like you said, we're running out of time.
Well, we
Uh,
lucked out too because there's three of us. There's one parking area, and this ridge kind of split into three separate ridges. There was
yeah,
like a really long one, which you were on. Bryce took this like funky one, and then I went on this little short ridge
yep,
to the south of you. And these ridges are like, I mean, there's a half a mile between tip to tip. They're big, man. So
yeah,
like I could hear you a few times calling and the turkeys gobbling. But anyways, Bryce split off pretty early. Me and you kind of walked together for a little bit until our ridges split, and then we went our separate ways. And what happened?
yeah. So I jumped on my Onyx, and I'm like, okay, so it's a really long ridge, and there was like a big knob, maybe I don't know, mile back, and then it broke off, and there was a spur ridge that ran uh, with a power line that kind of cut it in half. I'm like, okay, it's a good spot. And then the ridge continued, and it broke off into a couple of spurs in the back, which were maybe, I don't know, 700 yards from this knob. And I'm like, hey, maybe there could be a couple birds back there. So I started hoofing it back there, and it started to get gray light and light, and I made it to that knob, and the woods caught on fire, man. Gobbling out, they were gobbling all over the place. There's one down this little spur, and there was another bird down the ridge, and kind of that cluster of spurs. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is great. I lucked into this one. Thanks, guys. I'm like, I can't go anywhere. They're right here. So I ended up getting on the top of this knob, and there was a down. So on the knob, it's very open. It's wide open on top of this knob. Luckily, there was a down tree. I'm like, all right, this is good enough. I'll tuck myself in this down tree. Should give me enough cover. I can shoot the majority of the top of this knob. And this bird was just gobbling his head off at the end of this spur. I'm like, this is great. This is great. So he'd gobble. The other one would gobble. It was just wild morning. It was great. It got to the time where they kind of flew down. I started calling, and he was just gobbling his head off. And I'm like, I think I got this dude, you know? He's gobbling, and I'm calling, he's gobbling, I cut him off. It was really enjoyable. And he's working his way to me. And I'm sitting there, and I got the GoPro running. I'm like, he's going to pop his head over, and it's going to be game over. I got him. And he got to maybe, I don't know, 20 yards before he would pop his head up, and he's gobbling his head off, and I'm just waiting. This is going to be great. Pop his head over. I got him. And, you know, over my shoulder to the left, behind the down tree, another gobble, and he's like 50 yards. And I'm like, oh, whoa, I got two right in my lap. I'm like, how is this going to play out? And I kind of turn my head and look over my shoulder through this down tree, and I can see the fan. He's coming up the hill right at me. And I'm like, oh, no, I am not in position here. So the big guy that came off the spur, which I was set up for, he just starts just gobble after gobble, maybe 6 times. He couldn't get it out, you know, fast enough. Just gobble, 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 just fired up. And I see that, and I'm like, oh, God, this dude's super fired up. And he never like crested the ridge, but I knew he was right there. He's gobbling his head off. And I turn around, like I said, I could see the tail fan of the other gobbler, and he just spins and looks right at the other one, and they meet for a royal beatdown. They meet up, and they just start clucking and drumming, and then they went at it. Full-fledged WWE, you know, fight. And I'm like, holy, I've never had this happen to me before.
Spurs and all, huh?
Dude, wild. Like 2 little velociraptors fighting to the death. Just
Dude, they're dinosaurs, man.
Dude, they started kicking each other, and you could hear the feathers just getting smacked with their feet. And I'm like sitting there, and I'm stuck in this dead down tree, and they're behind the tree. And I'm like, I spun around. I could hear them kicking each other, and I'm like trying to poke my gun through the tree, and all I could see was their heads when they jump up to kick each other over the ridge. So, you know, every few seconds they jump and pat, 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 kick each other like 2, you know, roosters fighting.
And yeah, for you guys, if you've never been to Kentucky, these ridge tops are like maybe 20 yards across, and then they just drop. So those birds are 25, 30 yards from you. Just, dude, on the GoPro video, it's so loud. Like, you can hear it very well. So I know they were close, and just whoosh, 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 whoosh. You can hear their wings beating and everything. It's cool.
Yeah. So I've never been in a position like this. I'm like, what do I do? I go, this is awesome either way, but what do I do? So I ended up standing, and I'm like trying to poke my gun through, and I'm trying to time it, you know, when they jump, and I can see their heads, and I'm debating, do I just shoot him? But all I could see is their heads. And again, they're jumping in the air. So it's head up, head down, head up, head down. And I'm like, this ain't going to work. And I don't want to blow it. They're right here. They end up fighting for who knows how long. Felt like forever. I'm like, you know what? I'll be patient. I'll let them decide who the winner is. I'll take the winner. So I ended up just like nestling back down because I couldn't get through this tree. And I really didn't know what to do. So I just waited, and they end up fighting. The loser takes off. In the winner, he's kind of working his way back to his spur where he came from. Not gobbling, not making any noise, but I could hear his feet. Never crests. So I just, he got to where he cleared the tree, so I could get a shot, and I just did a couple of light, yep, and I'm like, okay, I'm ready, safety off. He's gonna poke his head up and just see where I'm at, and maybe a couple of minutes go by. I'm like, what is he doing? Come look. I'm right here. Come look. And sure enough, he wraps all the way around that knob and pops up to my weak side, and peeks his head up, and I can see him telescope, and I'm like, oh no, he got me. And he peeks up, looks around, scans, doesn't see nothing. I can't move because he's looking right at me, and ends up popping his head down and gone. Wild morning, man.
Bested again.
Golly. Yeah. I just was waiting for his little head to pop up. I thought I was in a good spot, and he snuck around that little ridge and popped his head up in the only spot that I couldn't shoot. Weak side, over my right shoulder. Dang it.
Dang it, dude. That's crazy. I've never seen anything like that either. I've seen birds kind of in the fall fly down and do their little pecking order thing where they're kind of like running each other around and stuff, but I've never seen it like a full-on fight like that. That's wild.
Yeah, it was something to see.
Dinosaurs, dude. Dinosaurs. Like
fighting to the death.
Seriously, man. Yeah. But that's crazy though. So, I'm just on the other ridge from you, and I could hear all this happening where you were. And I also had a bird there. These ridges will go and they'll drop down to a saddle, and then there'll be a knob, and then they'll keep going. Well, the knob on my ridge had a bird gobbling. And probably TMI, but when me and you split up, dude, I had been having some stomach issues. Like I hadn't, traveling doesn't work good for me. So I'm like in the middle of, going to the bathroom in the woods, and a turkey gobbles on my ridge. So I'm like, hurry up, pull my pants up. And I start moving in on this bird, and he's gobbling. And I think I ended up moving in a little too far on him is what happened. Because when he flew down, he like went silent and just disappeared. So then I was just sitting there in the dead silence, listening to your ridge and Bryce's ridge just go off with gobbles constantly. And I'm like, I picked the one ridge that, but I guess I had a bird on it. I just blew it. But what ended up working out for that hunt, for me at least, is the public, it kind of, all the public around there kind of has roads around it. And then those roads have like houses. Then those roads have houses with like little backyards, and then, there's more public, behind the backyards and all that stuff. So I'm up on top of this ridge. It drops down to like this little neighborhood and then goes back up, and then there's public on the other side. And that whole morning, I could hear a bird gobbling over there on the other side of those houses. And he was on some private, it sounded like. And, I would call to him and he'd gobble, but he never moved. And then there would be dogs barking, he would gobble, and that kind of played into our next hunt the next day. So Bryce saw some jakes, I think, on that hunt that morning. You had all that crazy action. It was kind of dead for me after that. And we all, kind of ended up meeting up in the afternoon, and I think we were all absolutely exhausted by that point because we went out and got food, and that was, I think, the night we didn't roost birds, right?
Yeah.
We got some food and just kind of hung out and planned on kind of coming back to the same area in the morning. But I remember, so how did we do that? Me and you were going to go out those same ridges, and I was going to drop Bryce off underneath where that bird was roosted. And so I did that in the morning. You took off way ahead of us to try and claim our spot. And I'm talking to you on the phone. I'm like, is it clear? Are we good? And you're like, there's somebody here. Someone was
Yep.
backing into our spot. So we were pretty bummed.
Yep.
You had a spot that you had some success on last year, Redemption Ridge. We call
Yeah,
it.
I nicknamed it Redemption Road.
Yeah,
So
Redemption Road.
I wanted to go back in the worst way. There had been already been trucks there, the last couple of days, but it was finally, I drove ahead, tried to get that spot back. Somebody else took it. So be it. You guys went to the end where we got boot. Somebody else was there the day before. I'm like, let me get back to Redemption Road. I'm gonna roll solo. This is where last year it was the last day, the last morning. So I knew
Yeah.
the ridge very well, and I knew where I wanted to get, and I wanted to be very patient. Last year I heard some birds gobble back there, and I waited until, I don't know, 10 o'clock and got frustrated. My last day, I kind of wanted to go home. Ended up getting up, walking down to the road to head home, and I look up through the saddle, and here comes a Tom, jogging down the road trying to come meet up with me, and he sees me standing there, and I'm like, blew it. So I wanted to go back there. Ended up doing that, sitting in the morning. I know you guys took that other spot, and I'll let you tell that story. I ended up sitting there all morning, being very patient, and didn't really hear anything. But I'm like, I'm not going to give up. I'll sit here, be patient. And sure enough, late morning, a guy comes walking up the ridge from where I thought the birds would be. And I ended up, talking to him, and kind of fizzled out my morning for Monday morning. But
Yeah.
you guys had a much different morning.
Yeah. So I dropped Bryce off on like the west end or the east end of that chunk. And then when we were coming in, the access road kind of comes in on the west end of that chunk, but we were going to go down different ridges and not even be kind of in the vicinity of Bryce. Well, because there was a guy there, I said, well, I'm just going to drive all the way to the end. John's going to go to Redemption Road, and I'm going to come in to the same chunk that Bryce is on, but just kind of like work towards him in the morning. It's huge, like it's big.
Mm-hmm.
And I start working my way through there. Don't hear any gobbling. It's a windy morning too, right?
Very
Opening
windy.
morning was perfect. Sunday morning was perfect. Monday morning, 20 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour gusts probably. It was hard to hear anything. Very windy. So maybe not that strong, but it was pretty windy. So I start working all the way back, and I know I'm getting pretty close to where Bryce's ridge. And I'm trying to think of how this exactly went. I ended up, there's a big power line, and that's the one thing that I kind of noticed that these birds are congregating around, man, because hens need. Do you hear like a? Do you hear
Yeah,
like
like
a?
a white noise.
Yeah, what is that?
I don't know.
Oh, it's rain. It's downpouring at my house right now. Holy crap. Anyways, so Bryce is on this very far ridge. I dropped him off pretty much underneath where I heard these birds gobbling. The birds are on private, and the public kind of surrounds the private. And I end up kind of getting to this power line and looking. You can see for a mile. I call a bunch. I don't hear anything. But these birds really seem to hang out around the power lines. Everywhere we had really good encounters, everywhere we were hearing birds was around a power line, and that's where the hens want to nest. A lot of the tops of these power lines were like kind of open spots that birds could roost on or could strut on. And then like down the sides of the hills and the bottoms was like real thick, overgrown, kind of brushy stuff, like perfect for like nesting habitat and stuff like that. So the birds want to be around these, and it's a really good place for them to roost and gobble because their gobbles go such a long way. So I just start working down this power line, and it goes down and up and down and up, and I'm like, at some point I'm gonna, get to a spot and be able to see forever, and there's gonna be a bird out in the field, out in this power line. So I end up cresting the top, and I'm looking way down in, and sure enough, there's a tom out in the middle of this power line strutting.
In the bottom, right?
In the bottom, yeah. He's down in the bottom. I'm way up at the top, and this is a steep hill, and the path goes right down the middle of the power line straight to him. So I can't just walk down the power line, even though at this point he's probably 350 yards from me. Like, he's going to see me just walking down the middle of the power line right at him. So I stand there for a while. I hear him gobble a couple times, and there looked like there were a couple hens down there with him, but I kind of made this decision, and I think it was the bird that Bryce was on, because I could hear Bryce calling and gobbling like early in the morning when I was like working back the power line, and then that kind of got quiet for a while. But I decided I'm going to have to make a move on this bird. There's no way I'm going to call him up to me, so I'm going to have to kind of drop down to his level and try and get within like 150 yards of him and call to him, and maybe I can pull him up that power line. So that's what I did. So I ended up getting off that path, off the power line, which was treacherous to say the least. I don't know. The way they build those power lines, they just, push up all the big rocks and sandstone and build those roads, you know what I mean? And the sides of them are just freaking drop off. So I'm like walking down the side of the power line in the woods. So I'm keeping stuff between me and that bird. And I'm just, trying not to pretty much slide to my death the whole way. And every once in a while I can hear him gobble, so I know he's still there. And every once in a while I would just, if it was easy to, I'd just pop up back in the power line and look down and make sure he's still there. And, because I'm like, I'm not climbing all the way down in here if I can't see him, you know what I mean? I wanted to kind of keep tabs on him. So I keep walking and working my way down, and I end up, at one point, dude, it was pretty crazy. I was probably within 200 yards of him, and I step on this big rock, and the rock just starts tumbling down the hill. And I'm like, oh no. And it hits a tree, dude, and just goes crack, 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 and it just echoes through this valley. He just gobbled right at it, dude, and I was like, oh no. So I stood there for a little while, and he was still out there, so I ended up dropping straight down, and it's steep, man. You know how steep these hills are. It's crazy. Into the bottom, and then I work out this creek bottom. I end up crossing the creek, or crossing the power line in the creek, and getting up, like, kind of on the side of the, power line he's on. Set up about 40 yards in the woods and start calling to him, and I got pretty aggressive with it, because I'm thinking, and this was kind of our tactics, I want to go back to this, is like, calling birds to places that they probably don't see a lot of people, right? And I'm down in this like crazy bottom. There's no easy access. Like, getting out of here is going to be hell. He's probably never heard a hunter, or if he has, it's been a long time, calling to him from down in there, right?
But he probably has been called at from the top of that ridge.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Where it's easy, right off the beaten path. Where
over and over again, probably, right?
3 or 4 guys had been in there the last couple of days.
Yep. And there were boot tracks in there on that big main trail up top. But I'm way down in the bottom with him now. And I'm probably 100 yards, 150 yards. So I get aggressive. I'm cutting, I'm yelping, pausing for a little bit, and yep. And nothing. So about, I want to say 25, 30 minutes goes by, and I'm getting antsy, and I'm like, where is this bird? Did he like disappear? And then all of a sudden I hear a gunshot go off. And it was kind of in the direction of Bryce, I thought. But he said it wasn't him.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm thinking, like, maybe that's the bird that I was on. At the time, I thought maybe he went up to Bryce, and Bryce killed him or something. And so I stand up, and I'm about like 25 yards into the woods, and I kind of start working my way out to the power line, and I'm just going slow, and I'm looking, and I get like kind of right to the edge, and I'm looking down the edge of the power line, looking for that bird, and all of a sudden I see him, and he's just feeding probably 45 yards, just walking right down the edge of the power line to me. And I'm like, oh shit. He's coming. He's still here. Like, I thought he was gone, you know? It's been so much time. So I ended up backing up, sitting back down, and just waiting. I didn't even call again, but he definitely was coming in there to, where's that hen at? And that's a really good lesson for people too, because I could have just as easily blown that hunt by getting up like that. Like, they call it like living on turkey time, dude. Like, turkeys really they're not looking at their watch and they're like, dude, it's been 15 minutes. Where are you at? Like, he was sitting up there strutting. He heard me calling, and I was calling like I was coming into him, So he just laid back and he's waiting. He's waiting and he's waiting. And it took him about 25 minutes to be like, where is this hen at? Like, what is going on? And like, like, I might try to sound like I'm this great turkey caller, but inadvertently, like, he probably got frustrated and started working in, and he was working in slow, hoping to run into her. And he was definitely cautious. When I first caught a glimpse of him, he was stopping. He'd stop every, 10 seconds, and he'd just look. And he'd stretch out all the way. And there's a couple times I'm like, dude, he saw me, and then he'd put his head down, and he'd start pecking, and he'd walk a little. And he walked 25 yards from me, and I ended up putting him right in the scope, and I didn't miss this one. So it was pretty cool.
So you smoked him.
Yeah, smoked him. So it was like having the balls or the guts to make that big move on him, because that's something like in the past I've been like, dude, probably not. Like, no. And I was just like, dude, I gotta go for this bird. I can see him. It's one thing when you can hear a bird gobbling down in, but like I can see him. He's strutting out in this field, like. He's probably going to be there for a little bit. Like, make a move on him. Go for it. And then call.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yeah, go ahead.
From when you saw him at the top of that ridge, how much time elapsed from you deciding to go for him and then actually getting to the bottom?
Oh, easily an hour.
So it was an hour effort to get close to him.
Yep. And I never called to him once until I was set up in the bottom 100 yards from him. It could have been a very different hunt if I was like trying to call to him while I was coming down the hill and get him to gobble so I knew where he was. Like, maybe you could do it with a locator call, but I've found that they don't respond to those very well down there, in my opinion. Like the owl hooters in the morning and the evening, but like the crow calls and stuff, like I just haven't had luck with that. So my best bet was just to throw rocks at trees to get them to gobble and then, pop my head out every once in a while just to make sure he was still there. But like, yeah, it was I'd say at least an hour. So yeah, and then I get this bird, I do a couple interviews and, take some pictures and video and tag him. And then I start walking out with that bird, and, all of a sudden I hear another gobble back in that direction, and I hear calling. Excuse me. And I'm assuming it's Bryce. It's on the ridge he was on. I was down below him probably quarter mile. And gobble, gobble, gobble. Gobble, gobble, gobble. And this goes on for about 5 minutes, and I'm like just taking breaks as I'm coming up this like super steep hill, and I just hear boom. And about 30 seconds later, my phone rings. I blew it. So I'm like, dude, don't worry about it. I killed one though, so meet me at the top of the hill. And he's like, oh, did you kill my bird and everything? It was pretty funny. But yeah, Bryce ended up, he had a bird come in, and just kind of caught him off guard, came in, I think, to the right of him, and maybe he can tell this story better than I could, but he really had no chance but to make like one of those quick moves and try and pop a shot off, and when he did that, he missed. So, yeah, like I said, a theme of this trip was missing turkeys.
Yeah.
But
So while this was happening, I ended up, like I said, that guy walked up on me. So I'm like, all right, I'm done. I ended up talking to you on the phone. You said, oh, I got him. It was a heck of an effort. He goes, it's probably going to take me forever to get out of here. He goes, but there are other birds in here. You heard gobbling. Bryce was on it. So I'm like, all right, well, here I come. Let's not give up. So it took me forever to get back over there. Ended up while I was trying to meet up with you guys. I'm just walking on this, logging road at the top of the ridge, just working my way back. Kind of taking my time, and I end up hearing, shh, 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 down the ridge from me, maybe 40 yards. It's different for me down there. There have been so many times over the last couple of years being down there where you hear that, shh, shh, and you're like, oh, there's one. And you sneak over to the edge of the ridge and you try and look down. And it's just a squirrel. It's, whatever. I've been duped too many times. I'm like, I'm just going to keep rolling. And then, it's louder. And I'm like, wait a minute. Maybe that's not a squirrel. And, my red dot's off. My safety's on. I have it on my shoulder. And I'm like, that sounds louder. And I walk to the edge of the logging road and just take a little peek, and 3 white heads pop up, maybe 15 yards from me. And they're like, and I'm like, oh no, try and get my gun out, try and turn the red dot on, pull a little John Wick move. I run down the edge and slide it, like a baseball slide, to try and get down on them. And I just couldn't make it happen. It was, but it was 3 Jakes walking the top third, of the ridge. They were not walking the top because I was trying to be very careful, as I was walking that logging road, to not be complacent and walk down the middle, la-di-da down the road and then run into a bird.
Yeah.
I wanted to constantly take every corner slow, look ahead. And yeah, they were walking that top third and they ended up, busting me. But I ended up, moving on and kept following you. And I kind of tried to keep an eye on them, see which way they went. Ended up meeting up with you, got to see the bird, big bird.
Yeah, he was big.
Congrats, dude. Big
Thank
bird.
You. Thank you.
And, just looking at you, I'm like, what happened to you? Because you were drenched in sweat.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, dang. You're like, dude, this was some effort, dude. I'm like, oh, I can tell you are soaked to the bone, after climbing out of that bottom, with that big bird on you, old stinky bird.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, that was cool. Got to see it, take some pictures, congratulate you. So yeah, we ended up getting out of there.
But we did. We cleaned that bird up and got it on ice and everything, and we had an ace in the hole in our back pocket. For
the following
for that afternoon. Well, for that afternoon, right? We wanted to jump in the truck, and we were all gonna head over to this place that I've deer hunted before. And John's deer hunted there before too. And there's some big open public fields down in the bottoms. And we're like, let's get down in there. We'll set up turkey decoys and we'll just all sit and, hang out, talk, chat, and call. And if a bird walks in, he does. If he doesn't, at least we're not walking around. We're just sitting and relaxing.
We were pretty spent, so it was like we need to, kind of dial it down, going 1,000 miles an hour.
Yes.
There was a hay field on this piece of public, and we're like, let's just get in there, pack a couple sandwiches, set up, and wait it out. Go ahead, you can handle it.
Yeah, so in the whole, I knew we were talking it up too much because the whole weekend we're telling Bryce, oh, secret spot. There won't be anybody there. Nobody will be there. Blah, blah, blah. We got it. And we show up, and sure as shit, there's a dude there from New York parked. And we're like, oh no. So we drive past the spot, and there's a group of 5 or 6 turkeys up in the field.
Mm-hmm.
And they're probably way back in the woods and have no idea those birds are there or something, you know? So we're like debating, like, do we be those dicks, those assholes, and like park here too and try to work in and call those birds in? And, you know, just in case they were on those birds, maybe they, you know, we decided we'll leave. We'll just plan on being here really early in the morning and giving it a try. Let's just go try some new ground. You know, we sat there for a little bit. We all looked at our maps and we picked out a couple spots that were like 2 roads over, a road over. And we go driving around and park and, you know, I couldn't hunt. I wasn't bringing my gun. So I just brought a couple turkey calls and I'm walking behind Bryce and John. We picked this spot. Why did we pick that spot? Just because it was kind of close, easy access. It was a big chunk of land. There was a lot of private fields that kind of butt up next to it, and there was a power line too, right?
Yep. There's a power line in the back that we wanted to, at a minimum, investigate.
Yeah.
Maybe it would be the same situation as your bird, how you killed him. You know, in the
exactly.
afternoons, it seemed to be that they'd move off the ridges, get low, get into the hay fields, you know, or a power line, or, you know, so we wanted, at a minimum, investigate that.
Yeah. But we're walking back, and like
Bryce comes out of nowhere. He goes, "You hear that?"
Yeah.
And me and you were like, you know, chit chatting, and we're like, "Didn't hear anything." He's like, "Dude, I heard one," and we're like, "Okay." And we keep going, another like 50 yards, and in this bottom.
Yeah.
You know, it was in a bottom.
And he was what? Probably 100 yards, 150 yards from us?
So that's what we thought, right? So there's the 3 of us standing on this little logging road, and it was a narrow bottom, you know, maybe 100 yards across. And we're like, okay, 3 of us standing here. Let's implement a group tactic. You know, Josh will hide behind. Me and Bryce will scoot up as far as we can. And let's get on him and have, you know, you, Josh, call him back.
Yeah.
So you were going to hang out behind us and do all the calling for us.
Yep. So this bird, we're standing there kind of debating, like, what do we do? What do we do? This bird gobbles 3 or 4 times in a couple minutes. And it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you know? So we're like, dude, we couldn't have walked into a better situation. And like you said, this logging road kind of wraps around like the very base of the left side of this ridge that goes up out of the bottom. So the big portion of the bottom is off to the right. And then right where this logging road is, it just starts going straight up. And there's a little drainage that comes off up in front of us. And there was some greenery. So Bryce takes the upper side, you know, so he can kind of cover the logging road and kind of cover up, you know, up the ridge, and you take the lower side so you can cover the bottom and maybe shoot the logging road too, depending on where this bird comes from. I back up about 50, 60 yards and just start hammering, just calling. He gobbles, call again, he cuts me off, gobbles, and then I just get quiet. And I don't think I really called again.
No, I mean, he absolutely responded to you.
Yeah.
Over and over. And, you know, me and Bryce kind of scooted up as far as we could.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't super greened up, but there was a little bit. And we didn't want to push our luck.
Yeah.
And blow it. You know, we've only got, you know, a couple hours to make this happen before it gets dark. So, yeah, we scoot up. I drop down off the logging road, get kind of in the bottom. And I'm just waiting for him to turn this corner. You know, I was expecting him to be full strut or whatever. And then Bryce got up above me so he could cover the logging road.
Yeah.
And we waited it out. I mean, you stopped calling.
I bet like 10 minutes went by where there was like nothing. We were like, he's either coming or he's like still waiting. And then he gobbled again. And I knew as soon as when he gobbled again, he was like getting frustrated. Where are you at? Like, why aren't you coming? Where are you at? And I was still quiet. And then I do some like leaf scratchings. Because at this point, he sounded 80 yards, you know.
Oh, he was right there.
I'm like, he's going to walk in at any moment here. We're going to see him. And then, boom, he'd gobble again, and I would just be quiet. And so we just all sat there and in silence and just let it kind of play out. And he ended up working in. And I remember I'm like watching you guys way up ahead, and I see Bryce turn his head like this, and he's like looking up the hill. So I knew he was seeing something. And to go with the theme, watching him, and this bird's working in, and he ends up swinging his gun and takes a shot, and the bird goes running up the hill and disappears over the top. And we like, I didn't really know what happened. I don't think you knew what happened. We just saw Bryce take off running after this bird, and he comes back, and boy, he looked like he let us down, So we were both like, let him down easy, man. It happens, And so we were talking, and that bird just didn't want to. And it's a public land bird, man. Like, I think if we were hunting some of these private farms around here, that bird would have walked right in and gave you a 15-yard shot. But he was being smart. He wanted to get up above where he heard that hen and look down. And when he was doing that, Bryce just misjudged how far that bird was. I think he probably took a shot at a bird that was probably at 50, 55 yards through the woods. So,
but the gig was up. We kind of asked Bryce, hey, where were you? What did you see? Why did you set up here? And he ended up maybe not going up high enough to take away an angle, and he picked a kind of a smaller tree.
Yes.
So his shoulders were sticking out past the ends, and I think when that bird tried to get up to see, he peeked over, and I think he might have profiled him.
Yeah.
So Bryce kind of had to make a decision. The gig is up. He ain't coming any closer.
Yeah.
That's
a really good point. Is and I'm guilty of it a lot of times too. Is like when you're sitting down to like hide and the turkey's coming in, like make sure you're hidden. Like you want to be hidden. Like sometimes it's not enough just to rely on your camouflage. Being against a big tree, that's gonna be like as wide as your shoulders or wider. Having stuff behind you, Bryce had a bunch of greenery in front of him, which would have made it kind of difficult to shoot through, depending on which way that bird came from. You want to camouflage works. I mean, it works really good if there's a bunch of stuff in front of you, but really what it's meant for is to break up your outline, and by breaking in to help break up your outline, you want a bunch of stuff behind you as well. And I don't think he had that either, which it was high pressure. Everyone was tired. Everyone was, a little frustrated from how the week had gone, except me. And, just quick decisions. And I know when I was like, I really felt like I want this to work out. I want somebody to kill this bird. So I was like, hurry, sit down. I think I may have pressured Bryce a little quick to like make a decision where we definitely had time. We could have, so that's partially on me too. But yeah, we, that bird ran up the hill. So we were thinking there's a chance maybe he did hit him and maybe he died. Me and Bryce ended up walking up there, and we walked all that stuff and never found him. But, just goes to show you 3:00 in the afternoon, public land. Like if you're one of those turkey hunters who like is giving up at noon because it just don't feel right to hunt in the afternoon, and I'm going to go home or sit at camp and I'll get back out in the morning, like don't waste your day, man. Get out there and cover some ground and, try some new spots and you might luck out. So,
and to add to it, as we were walking in on that bird, there were boot tracks all over that little logging road.
Oh yeah.
People had been in there the last couple of days. You cannot get discouraged. You don't need the secret spot,
Yep.
down there. You just can't get discouraged.
Yep.
If there's boot tracks, so be it. They're still there. They're still in there. You play your cards right, it doesn't mean you're not going to have success.
Yep. Turkeys are not smart. They forget about that stuff 10 minutes after it happens, I believe, and they go back with their daily routine and doing what they do. Like the term pressured bird, I think is very different than the term like pressured deer, right? A big
Yeah.
pressured buck will act very differently and change his routine and only move at night or whatever. Where I think there is probably some behavioral changes. Maybe they do what that bird did with Bryce, where instead of walking right in, they circle around uphill and look down. But like you're going to be able to, they're in there. You're going to be able to hear them. If they're gobbling, you're going to be able to call them in. Because like you said, man, there was a bunch of tracks. Had been a bunch of people in there. So especially 2-year-old birds, which is probably what that was. Like,
Oh, yeah.
yeah,
You could hear his gobble, and Bryce said I got a good look at him, and his term was, man, that one had a rope on him.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
But yeah, so that was I felt bad for Bryce. We ended
rough
up
weekend for Bryce.
Yes.
Very rough weekend for him.
yes, but I think he learned a lot. I think he left with a very positive attitude, and took some good things away from that trip, and I think he'll be back. I think he's going to have to come back and redeem himself. He has his own redemption road.
That's it.
that
Yeah.
he needs to.
You know,
So
we had a lot of good conversations with him. Just trying to advance him in his knowledge and tactics, and I think it was awesome for him to come, and I think he left extremely discouraged, but coming out with a ton of knowledge.
yeah, I
And
think, and when you hunt like that, and me and you are kind of, pretty intense about it too. So we like, when we're there, that's all we do. It's not like
Yeah.
we're relaxing or anything. It's like you got 4 days, like go until you drop dead.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
probably a little different for him. But
I think he made a comment, the effort. He goes, golly, you guys are just go, 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 dark to dark, but again, I I don't get to do this a lot,
yeah,
I don't have, a week and a half vacation to where I could be like, this afternoon, whatever,
I'm
we'll
gonna
blow
take
this
it
one
easy.
off,
Yeah,
we'll recharge, and I'd come back next week.
yeah,
I don't have that,
yeah.
So
Well,
I'm going dark to dark, and I'm gonna find him at night, and I'm gonna get up super early, and I'm gonna get in on him.
yeah.
Um,
And I will say this, and then we'll stop talking about you, Bryce. But he's a younger guy, and I feel this too, and I definitely was a lot like him. Like I went through a period where I was missing deer like it was my job. I'd wound them and not find them, or I just blow it and just miss them by 3 feet. And that happened to me for a few years, and I think. Bryce is a lot like me, and you're at that. He's at that age where he feels like, he wants to prove himself as a hunter, and it's like being successful is, that you got to do it, and you want it so bad. And I think you went through this too, where you want it so bad that you psych yourself out and you blow it. And I think that's a common thing for a lot of hunters where they just, I think when I started becoming much more successful and not blowing it as much, not making bad shots, making good shots on deer, shooting turkeys more consistently, is when I kind of quit caring whether I was successful or not and what people thought about me as a hunter. Like, I used to have this thought like, oh, I'm Josh, I'm the deer hunter guy, everybody knows me as that guy, and I have to live up to that, right? And I think when you get past that, I think it makes it, you don't put so much pressure on yourself, right, to be
and
successful.
things seem to come together for you easier and better.
Yes, absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely.
take that pressure off yourself, but you know, to kind of get through that.
I still feel it rearing up. That bird I missed on Saturday morning, there was pressure there for me to be like, oh, I want to look cool in front of my friends. I want to, show them how good of a turkey hunter I am. And I felt that in the back of my mind when that bird was walking in, and I could see him. I could see me dragging him out already. As soon as I start thinking like that, I know I'm going to make a terrible decision. So it's just stuff you got to learn from and get past it. But, yeah, it was a fun trip. We ended up going back to that chunk in the morning where we had saw those birds out in the field and the New York guys were there. And we heard a few birds and tried to make some moves, and we didn't really have much
Didn't add up
action.
to a lot.
Yeah, Bryce went on another chunk and kind of covered a ton of ground, and he didn't hear anything either. It was a windy morning.
I heard birds back there, but you know, it was the last day, and we had every intention of getting in there, and really scouting a little bit more. You know, we'd been there deer hunting a little bit, but you know, it's kind of double duty today.
Yeah.
We took some cameras on our backs, and we found some good sign.
Yeah, we
We
did.
hung a couple cameras. Excited for what's to come out of that for the fall.
Yeah, me too. I'm very excited. That was a big part of that whole weekend was I don't know if you got time to talk about that. We can talk about a little bit of our camera strategy while we were down there.
Let's do that on the next one.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. And we'll talk about my second
Ohio.
Kentucky trip and our Ohio hunt. We can talk about that on the next one too. So, yeah, got a lot of content to go over, guys. We'll end it here. It's been an hour and 18 minutes, so I'm sure it's plenty to listen to. But yeah, we'll be at you with the next one. If you guys are that was terrible. We'll be at you. We'll come at you with another one here soon. So stay tuned for that. If you guys are still turkey hunting out there, good luck. Hopefully you learned something from all of our stupid boneheaded mistakes, and it makes you a better turkey hunter. Good luck. Be safe, and we'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks, John.
Yep.